what I wanted to do with particularly the theme for today was really look at where things have come and where we're going. And clearly there is the whole thing of a rising tide lifts all ships. And certainly the tide is rising in relation to issues around reputation, trust, sustainability, relationships. I want to spend a little bit of time, which I'll touch on, and I think the brief video showed you as well, is actually how much we have actually changed over the last 20 years, and possibly how simple things seemed beforehand, but really where we are now, and particularly where we are going. I think there's some very interesting indicators of what's coming up that really I'm hoping will speak to each one of you here today. The aim is that there should be one thing, I hope, that you will come away perhaps broader, looking at something in a different perspective, and perhaps maybe you haven't heard before. Although knowing everyone in this room, I suspect it is things you've heard before, but reconfirming, I think, things that we are living in our day-to-day existence, and also looking ahead. If I go back, and again, I think as we saw in the earlier videos, sort of 1989 onwards, life really did seem a lot easier, a lot simpler. I would almost suggest it was like an age of innocence. And I see this particularly when we look at echoes of the past, how we were children playing in the streets, how simple life was then as opposed to how perhaps we manage our children today, how we were really only connected to a few people we knew and we knew quite well. They were nearby. The media channels were known and limited, and we knew the readership, and we could reach them quite well. And there was a lot of trust in the institutions and the powers that be they governmental, organizational, institutional. Obviously, fast forward to present day, the barometers of trust, as Edelman and other research has shown us, is at an all-time low, and worryingly getting lower, and we'll come on to this, I think, again and again through the theme of the afternoon. The connectivity, obviously, is so much broader. At one point, I remember 6 degrees of separation coming out. I think now it's 2 or 3 degrees of separation, and how people are reaching out and connecting to people they will likely never meet, but are linked in on things that matter to them, things that they're interested in and they want to share and exchange on. So how that has changed. The media landscape is changing before our very eyes, almost second by second around the world, and what's happening there. And there is this sort of move to, or passion, if you like, around thrift and perhaps more discreet consumption than we've had in the past. And we can see that with all the television programs of unclutter your home and unclutter your life. There is a change. Things are different. Within that too, we again look at the past, and CEOs aspired to be at the head of the company. Now, really, they are a fishbowl, basically, open, transparent to the outside world, open to criticism from all directions. There was a wonderful visual, I remember when we looked at for this one, and it had a huge face of a cat behind the fishbowl, and I thought that's perhaps very tempting, but I didn't really want to highlight the risk, but clearly it is a very different and hugely demanding world that I think leaders have to cope with, and the complexity that brings to them is significant. Within that, and I think certainly the work that we're seeing, there is a much greater focus on not just what is it to be the customer brand, what is it to be the employer brand, what is it to be a corporate citizen brand, but actually how do all these three things come together? If I buy a product, is this the product of a company I want my daughter to work in? Is this a product I want to be seen walking around with on the street? Is this a product that identifies with my values and my own sense of myself? These are the things, how it's all coming together, and increasingly we're hearing about holistic management and holistic approach to stakeholder engagement, so we can see the levels of complexity coming through. So while we may sort of bemoan sort of a loss of innocence, a loss of simplicity, within our life of simplicity, we also had an awful lot of misjudgment, mistakes, things that severely impacted our lives today at many different levels, be it pollution, be it climate change, be it the issues of greed, pay, remuneration, again, how we define ourselves and how we are actually going to go forward, how we look at motivation. These things are all coming together almost from the sins of our past, and it's not that long ago. Clearly, the rules of engagement, you all know these things. But as I think probably the last point, it really speaks to it. We're moving from a world of really focusing on tangibles to a world that increasingly is going to focus on the intangibles. And therefore, for you in this room who are a combination of business leaders, business counselors, advisors, gurus, all the different aspects we have here in this room, these are the kind of things that I know you're grappling with and you're dealing with. We're coming into an age, clearly, of connectivity, much more dialogue going on. It's transformative. I think we should welcome this. People finally can reach out in all sorts of different directions, be it the latest cures for cancer, be it the latest model of the Apple iPhone that may be coming out, whatever it may be. People are connecting on things, issues, items that matter to them. And how do institutions, how do organizations play a role in this? And I know we'll be hearing more about that this afternoon. We're coming into an age of listening. Again, when we rebranded ourselves as Echoes, it was very much about listening to the echoes out there. And therefore, Echo Research seemed to be a very good name, brand, if you like, for the kind of work that we do and we represent. I think also we're coming into an age of learning. We're hearing an awful lot, particularly now, when organizations are turning to research. They're turning to research for things that matter. And they're saying to us things like, help us understand what is best practice. What have we done well? What do we need to do differently? Help us understand what's around the corner. Help us learn and anticipate what's coming up. Help us become a learning organization, particularly where we may be cutting staff, letting people go, and we don't want to suffer corporate Alzheimer's. How do we become learning organizations and really take that forward? And also, I think we're coming into an age of purpose. And with that, I think what was really interesting is work that we did for Severn Trent, and I know our client at the time was due to be with us today, and he just sent me a text saying he couldn't come. But he was talking about really the value of research, showing the organization inside out, if you like, becomes an insight process for an organization to own, and for the management and leadership to own, and actually understand what is its purpose going forward. And really within that, and I don't know if you saw, the Harvard Business Review on Monday just featured this latest book by Elizabeth Cantor, who's a professor at Harvard Business Review. And she was really talking about vanguard corporations and what makes them great. And she listed them. And there was sort of IBM, and there was Toyota. There were a number of major organizations that she's followed closely and said, what makes them special? What makes them stand out? And she recognizes that within those organizations, they themselves are saying it's not just about businesses being successful, it's about business having a purpose that motivates and guides their employees, their customers, their partners, and their really role in society as a whole. And she was quite interesting in how she brings this out. And she was saying people like going to work every day with the idea that they have two jobs. One is I do my job, and the second is I change the world. And how can you do that? And again, if we look at some of the slogans that IBM is embracing around water and so on, what does that have to do with technology? And they make that link beautifully. And she does go on to talk about the need and the value of greater collaboration and cooperation around the world. And she does really bring the whole point to say capitalism as it is now, the business model as it is now, is at a crossroads. Let's hope that there is a whole new way ahead for a 21st century model. So I commend this book to you for those who might be interested in exploring a little bit further what she says, but she does draw on some very hard case studies behind it. So really what I'd like to say is, farewell the age of innocence and simplicity. We may bemoan the fact that life was indeed simpler perhaps before. We didn't have 24/7, we didn't have all the speed and the pressures that we have now. But I think we are in a better age now. I think we are in an age that is more aware and is more thoughtful and is more careful, I would hope. And with that, and this is really where we sort of come back to today, I love this quote from Aristotle, because I think it plays to the hands of researchers very well, because we can put this into pictures for you. We can map, we can chart, we can trend, we can show you really how and where things are changing and why, what is best practice, what has worked, with visuals, to take really the leadership team and the teams internally and externally with you on what is fundamentally a journey. And I think with that, I really wanted to again, welcome you all here today, introduce you to, for those of you who haven't met him, Dr. David Michelson, who heads up our US operations. And David in particular is going to be looking at, again, how you bring research to bear on these sort of issues and the questions that he's been seeing and how they've changed over the last 20 years and where they're going. So with that, again, a warm welcome to all of you. Thank you so much for being here. And look forward to the exchanges during the rest of the day. Thank you.